Welcome, everybody. We are back. Game time today. Whoops. Just about took out my own screen. Mike and Maddie with you. Here to talk about game one of the Stanley Cup Finals, which has gone the way of the Colorado Avalanche in overtime last night. 145 into overtime. The Colorado Avalanche win in a game that was a bit bizarre. But that's the way it is. I think both teams will tell you they have better, but that is why they play a best of seven series. Maddie, give me your thoughts on this one. Obviously, the final score 4-3. Colorado jumping out to a 3-1 lead. You beat the horses out of the barn after one period. Tampa settles down, settles in, and a nice goal early in the overtime gives the Avalanche a 1-0 series lead.
Yeah, I mean, the game actually reminded me a lot of Tampa's performance in game one against the Rangers. I thought there were some very eerie similarities, including that of Andrei Vasilevsky having a terrible game, which I don't think you're going to see again. I mean, terrible to his standard. That's totally different than to other goalie standards. But for him, that was a bad game, not unlike game one against the Rangers. He settled in, players around him settled in. It's going to be, for me, a little bit of an adjustment period for Braden Point before he's going to become effective. You just can't. Like, didn't play for a month. Like, it's just going to take time. I really like where they put him in the lineup. I think that is good to ease him in on that third line. But, to me, Vasilevsky had a bad game. Steven Stamkos had probably hit one of the biggest non-performances I've seen from him in a while. Victor Hedman was terrible. And that overtime goal was just a very lackluster play by Sergachev. And I'm hoping that, take some accountability for that awful, awful decision with the puck. Just lackadaisical, and learn from it.
Is this a warning shot for Colorado? I think you know where I'm going with this. Tampa's not nearly 100% effective yet. They're one shot away from stealing one.
Yeah, I think it should be. The fact that they blew that lead, the fact that they allowed Tampa to settle in. Again, we had some very questionable officiating. I'm sure you've seen some highlights of that.
Yeah, I did.
That being said, I think Victor Hedman needs to. I know he's gotten the bad end of officiating in the last two games he's played in, but he needs to move past that. It's affecting his game. Or it looks like it is anyways. Can't speak for him, but I think it should be a warning to Colorado that if you're going to beat the Tampa Bay Lightning, it's going to require 60-minute efforts.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because I said it on the preview show yesterday on the Ultimate Hockey Show. Tampa hasn't seen a team like Colorado. Neither has Colorado seen a team like Tampa. And if you look at the preseason prognostication, this was the favored matchup among some of the sports books. So, we kind of got what we wanted, and yet it kind of under-delivered, but yet delivered in a sense.
Yeah, I think, like you said, it wasn't. I don't watch a ton of Colorado, so I can't judge too much. But that was not a good game at all by the Tampa Bay Lightning. But at the same time, it was still a very entertaining game to watch. So I think that we're only going to get more entertainment level as we go. Personally, I hope that you get as minimal interruptions from officiating in this series as possible and let these two teams play it out. And I mean, other than all the obvious stuff.
Yeah, to me, Maddie, if we can, I have an issue with um, the 5-on-3 yesterday. Um, the one I think it was the one where we put them down 5-on-3 with the Sorelli penalty. It's a penalty, but my issue with it is the official is hesitating whether to make the call. Um, to me, it's blatantly obvious there's hesitation. It wasn't just you know, a assertive like, "This is a penalty." Um, I'm also new crew is gonna do, to this series because, we have the crew that does game 1, game 3, and game 5. There's another crew that comes in, from the same pool of officials that does games 2, 4, and 6, and then they kinda take the best of the best if it gets to a game 7. Um, these are the best of the best officials, too. So that's something I think to bear in mind. The other thing I wanted to kind of just quickly address is this was a prototypical game 1 from Tampa. If you look at their history in the playoffs, they lost game 1 to Toronto uh, pretty badly. They beat Florida, but they lost to the Rangers, in fact, down 2 games to none. So
Pretty badly.
yeah, judging by some of the post game comments, I really don't feel like there was a sense of panic. Um, John Cooper wasn't really in a mood to toss up the Avalanche, more so than try to toss up his own team, but they could do better. Um, I really admire his tactics in that regard.
Yeah, I think, you and we've had this conversation before. You can start crediting the other team when your team plays a good game. If you play a good game and you lose, you credit the other team. But if you don't play a good game and you lose, well, you look in the mirror first before you make excuses. I will say the one thing that I thought Tampa Bay had going for them yesterday, and this is just a start, but Wayne Gretzky made the comment that Cale Makar's been the best player on the ice in almost every game.
Yep.
He was nowhere near the best player on the ice last night.
Yeah.
Um,
Y- Yeah,
so
and
that was, good for Tampa in that regard.
I've been something we need to keep in mind too, right? Like Colorado's been playing at such a high level the whole playoffs that if 3 or 4 guys aren't on their game for a specific night, it's not like many other teams where if those guys have bad games, the whole team kind of goes. Which is interesting because I thought some of their players weren't particularly good, but other players were able to step up and kind of pick up the bill, if you will, to make this team win. And Eric makes the comment here about Valerie Nichushkin. I mean, what's Dallas thinking, right? They bought him out. They didn't want to renew him. Uh, he winds up. He winds up basically in Colorado on a try-me deal and is having one of the better playoffs.
Yeah.
How much, Maddie, and this just a general question here, is this 3 straight Stanley Cups starting to wear on this Tampa team a little bit? Now, I know I know we had this discussion in the Toronto series, but I can't help but think this is hockey overload, but yet they know how to get it done when they're seemingly against the wall.
Well, and that's kind of what I was going to say. Like what you lose in maybe fatigue and the long seasons, you gain in experience and learning how to efficiency. And so I think it's a bit of a balancing act. Yeah, of course you've played more games than any other team in the last 3 years, and that's going to wear and tear. With you've seen their injuries, and I believe that a few are banged up right now. And but I think that what you lose in that, I do think you make up for with some mental experience and knowing what to do and when to do it and knowing how to do it. Um, so I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah, there's something for it being that it factor, and if I can pull it to the CFL for a minute, um, the Bombers won the Grey Cup last year based on their experiences of 2 years ago. So, once a team knows how to win, they know how to win, and it's just ingrained into that program. Um, it's interesting tonight. I thought Kel McCarr had a very interesting quote, not last night, but during the morning skate. And I'm
Yeah.
paraphrasing because I don't have the exact quote in front of me. But he said they're something to the effect of they are, as in Tampa, what we were trying to become. So,
Well,
it
so his quote was, "They are trying to become a dynasty. We're trying to start a legacy."
yeah, right. That's what it was, and I found it to be very interesting, um, because I don't want to say this is the start of Colorado becoming Tampa, but this is two teams that are kind of they're made for each other, which is what excites me about this matchup.
Yeah. So I I'm gonna actually completely disagree that Colorado's anywhere near Tampa at this point,
Right,
simply because of the man in the net. I don't believe that they can become any type of dynasty with their current goaltending situation. Give them not an Andre Vasilevsky because there's only one, but give them a good, above average starting goaltender.
right.
Then yeah, because I think team wise, team build, they're a lot on the similar pages, but I just can't the difference in net just sticks out like a sore thumb.
Right. Yeah, no, and that's a general sense among people, right? That's the temper. Like, here's my kind of issue with that scenario. Dusty Temper is, and maybe it's because he came from Arizona, but nobody seems to know who this guy is. I don't know, but like my kind of issue with this scenario is, I just don't know what it's gonna take for Darcy Temper to get not respect because you got that already, obviously being the Colorado Avalanche, but to me, everybody seems to be downplaying Darcy Temper, and I'm not trying to say, that you're right or wrong in any in any way, but it just startles me that people are that, and maybe it's because he's playing Vasilevsky, and to be honest, I'm guilty of it too. Because in the first 3 rounds, I thought Colorado's goaltending was going to be the one to let him down. But when is it time to maybe look at Dusty Temper maybe being better than a lot of people are giving him credit for?
Well, it'll be time to look at that when the numbers back it up, and when you gotta remember, he's only played 7 of these games. He hasn't It's not like he's played 13 games and won all 13. He's played 7. The other guy
Right.
played 6. The fact that, they weren't he said it's a hard decision of who to start in net for game 1. To me,
Is it that hard?
I don't think so, but the fact that the coach came out and said that, to me, is another example of that. Like, it's great to be confident in 2 goalies, absolutely, but you need to have a true number 1. So, when he has the stats and the record to back it up and in a consistent manner, then he will start getting the credit.
Does this not scream that Pedro Francouz will be the number one next year?
What's the contract situation?
Dusty Temper's a UFA.
If they like him, Francouz, then why not? If they don't, then
Right.
it's hard to say.
Eric brings up a really good comment about Andre Vasilevsky here, and I looked this up as well because I wanted to bring it up. Vasilevsky's 0-4 against the Avs in his last 4 starts with a 897 save percentage. Uh,
He was
Again,
0-4 against the Rangers this year too.
right? Yeah, so it's very interesting, right? Because to be completely honest, it's when the Tampa Bay Lightning are in position to face elimination or to win a playoff series, it's like you can't score a goal. I saw a statistic where the goal against average was like 0.14 and a 995 save percentage. Like it doesn't make any sense. But it's just interesting, right? And I also think too to compare the Rangers to Colorado, it's not really a comparison either. Um, because both now I don't think it's as much as people give Adam Fox credit. I don't believe it's a close matchup between Adam Fox and Cale Makar. Is it?
That's not even on the same planet.
Right, right. So we're seeing and to think that this guy came out of the BCHL and remember all the heat shots it took for Tate. Oh, there were plenty of other names that they could have gone with in that spot, and yet they went with this guy out of the BCHL named Cale Makar, and boy, did he prove a lot of people with that selection because Cale Makar was not in the number 4 spot.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously he's gonna have an impact on the series and you're expecting the guy on the other end in Victor Hedman to have an impact on the series depending how banged up he is. It's pretty
Right.
obvious that he is, just depending to what extent. Um, yeah, I don't think you can compare the Rangers and Colorado at all, other than both having very good power plays.
Yeah.
Um, other than
And
that,
and that's where I think what you said about the officials kinda gets interesting, right? Because if this is gonna turn into 5 or 6 power plays both ways, you're probably gonna have 2 or 3 goals, on each side on the power play. Um, and then you're gonna turn into a 4-3 or a 3-2 game. Um, yeah, this to me, and I'm gonna be careful. I'm gonna be careful how I say this because I can take a lot of heat for saying something like this, but I just want the officials to be part of the game, but not the game. It's the Stanley Cup final. These players have earned the right to be there. Let them play it out.
yep,
I think to start giving 3 or 4 or 5 power plays both ways is really disruptive. Um,
it's
to be
boring.
honest, I didn't sign up to see a special teams duel. Uh, I signed up to see a 5-on-5, good, hard, clean hockey series. If there are 5 penalties both ways and it's warranted, absolutely. But please don't make this about yourself.
Yeah, let it be the best team win, not the best power play win.
Right, and I mean, that's something that we have to remember. That being said, there's a 2-day break between the Nets game 1 and game 2 here. Everywhere else, there's a 1-day break. What do we make of this 2-day break, and who does it benefit?
Benefits Tampa Bay because they're in Colorado. They can start getting used to the altitude change and all that. I don't know why there's a 2-day break. I'm assuming it's for a Saturday night game.
Yeah,
This
I'm
is
assuming that too, and ABC in the States also has rights to the NBA final, but I'm assuming Hockey Night in Canada wanted the Saturday game since they don't get one later in the series.
that's right. Yeah, I would. That's probably why. But I think it benefits Tampa more just simply because I've played hockey in Colorado, and that altitude change is no joke. It is absolutely no joke.
Let's talk about this for a minute. What's that like? Because I mean, obviously, you go from wherever you're playing where there's no altitude issues to, playing in Denver. I reckon it to something like Calgary where maybe even worse to an extent. Um, what is that like? Especially because um there are altitude changes. And I've never been to Denver, but I've only heard about, the altitude and what that does to general people, never mind athletes. What is that like?
It's exhausting. It's like your 30-second shifts feel like a minute and you're taking the shortest shifts. Like I remember the first second period in Colorado was like sometimes you're going for a line change after 15 seconds because you don't want to risk getting caught on the ice. That being said, the longer you stay there, you do adapt, but the first couple games, first couple periods, whatever it is, well, first couple games, but holy man, it's exhausting.
And then obviously the Avalanche being used to that. I think when all is said and done, Maddie, the home teams are gonna win in this series more than they're not gonna win in this series.
Yep.
Uh, any road game to me is gonna be a bonus. I do give Colorado a bit of an advantage in Tampa just because they're used to the altitude. Um, as well. But again, it's just one of those things. But we're gonna have to deal with going forward. Really quickly, what are your thoughts on kind of the rest of this series? I know we talked about game two, and then is this kind of must-win territory for Tampa here, or can they afford to go down 2-0? I mean, we've seen them do it before. Um, it just seems to me to be a lot to ask. Yeah, to constantly put the pressure on yourself to win at home. No.
They must win territory for them just because they've done it before and them as a team do such a good job of their goal is to win a series, right? Individual games, yeah, they're part of that, but I don't think it's do or die, especially as long as it's like, an overtime or whatever it is. Um, I think that they're so strong at home and
Yeah.
their matchups are so good at home that it's just such an advantage when they play at home. Like they're so hard to beat at home.
Right.
So I don't think it's a must win. I think though, I do think that the lack of matchups on the road did have a factor in the game yesterday.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. No, and I think it's very interesting too. Like just to pull this to Tampa for a minute, they didn't have the matchup advantage with Braden Point back in the lineup. So Colorado could manipulate that matchup with Braden Point if they wanted to, knowing that he's had a month off and try to expose it that way. Um, but can we just talk about on Nikita Kucherov for just a minute? Um,
yes.
like everybody talks about, everybody talks about, Victor Hedman, and rightly so. But let's go back to that Rangers series quickly. I don't think I've had you on since then. And game three, and that world class pass that Kucherov makes to Palat, that, as we've heard about on the Ultimate Hockey Show, really only Tampa knows how to pull off.
And then he did it again.
Yeah, it's just remarkable. So I'm so excited for this series. Um, my thoughts and opinions about the series haven't changed, despite this one game, and I would have said the same thing about, Colorado losing just to do so did at home. Carry on. I don't think we can make any conclusions about game one. Um, yes, I understand the statistics are like 75 or 70% if you win game one. These teams are too good. One team could be 2 games up. Next thing you know, it's tied. Next thing you know, you drop that pivotal game 5. Now they come into your place with a chance to win the cup or vice versa. It's just interesting. Rob asked a very good question before we move on to the Blue Jays, Maddie, and that's been a completely different discussion since we last had a show, let me tell you. Um, do we see Kadri back in the series? If so, when and what impact will he have on the series? I am very careful with this because it's a broken finger. Um, Yeah, I'm not sure. Now, granted, it sounds like we could see Chattery. There was some whispers later on in the series, um, which would be remarkable. Now, I don't know about anything, in hockey and broken fingers and broken bones and all that, but what kind of impact would Chattery have if he comes back?
Well, number one, whether or not he comes back, I don't imagine he will. He had surgery to repair a break. You simply can't come back until that's fully healed. You just can't, unless he's planning to have another surgery, if it re-breaks, whatever, but you simply have to let a broken bone heal, or especially if he's already had the surgery on it. So, I don't think he'll be back. If he is back, I think he has the ability to make, many different types of impacts, both good and bad.
Right?
I think it's a wild card.
I don't need a reminder. I'm a Leaf fan, Maddie. No, 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 no. Let's not go there. But
Oh, well, and then I was
here we
gonna
are.
say next, he's due to do something stupid soon.
Right, right,
He's
right.
due.
Mhm.
So that's what I think. I think he's a wild card, and I don't know. I know that he adds a lot to that Colorado lineup, but I think that if they're up in the series or if it's close, then I think it's risky bringing him back in because he might come in and try to do too much and then do something stupid. That being
Right.
said, as someone who's cheering for Tampa, I hope he does come back in just because I think that he could get things going a little bit, and I think that it could favor Tampa in the penalty scenario.
Did that game have the bite that you thought it would have last night?
Uh, I to be honest, I don't expect a lot of bite from Tampa in game ones when they're not at home.
Right.
Really, the only guy that had bite was Josh Manson. And then you could see Pat Maroon was trying to dig it up a little bit when Tampa was down and kind of get a little bit of a spark. Um, but I don't really expect that from Tampa until they're at home. But for
Yeah,
Colorado, yeah,
man.
I expected a little bit. Again, without Kadri, that changes my opinion on that a little bit. But that made me think of one thing with Pat Maroon. Um,
Yeah, Rob made a great comment. It was actually his thumb. He's been skating, but without a stick because he can't grip the stick. Uh, yeah, if you can't grip your hockey stick, you're obviously not going to play hockey.
yeah.
I know that much. It's pretty uh, self-explanatory. Um, really quickly, Maddie, what do you think of those Blue Jays?
Uh, uh, hmm, I like a lot of aspects.
Hmm.
Um, Not sold on certain pitchers on that staff at this point. Not sold on Montoyo being a half decent manager. And what I am sold on, which I've said all year, which I also predicted, is Santiago Espinal. I'm sold on that.
Yeah. Um, All-star campaign, if you ask me.
He better be at the All-Star game.
But what do you make of Jose Barrios? I mean, he had that one bad start in Anaheim, I want to say it was. He
And
had the bad start opening night where he couldn't get out of the first inning. Um, but boy, oh boy, oh boy, the last three starts have been absolutely terrific. Until Yemi Garcia turns around and almost blows the thing right up last night.
he's been very questionable at best this year. Um, there's a lot of question marks in that Blue Jays pitching staff, both in the bullpen and in the starting rotation.
Yeah.
Um, the lack of consistency is not good, to say the least. My other question, so you're going into a tie ball game and you bring in Jordan Romano in the ninth, okay?
Right.
Um, which makes sense to a point. Where I question it is you know that in a 10th inning, we are starting with a guy on second base.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said this before, I've had this conversation with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Simber has multiple times been a 10th inning man, and it has multiple times cost the Blue Jays, not because Simber is not good, but
Mm-hmm.
because he produces ground balls. 9 out of 10 times, Simber comes out for the 10th. That runner is advancing to third with less than 2 outs because he's a ground ball pitcher. So I'm just wondering the logic behind him being in for the 10th as opposed to the ninth when there's not a runner starting on second. Because I've seen it bite the Blue Jays a few times just
Right.
because he's a ground ball out guy.
Right. And then Rob wants to get into the pitch to Vladdy thing in the 10th inning. Yeah, it's quite remarkable. To be honest, Matty, I just think it's the matchup. I think it's the matchup. I think, to be honest, you're not guaranteed to go to the 10th inning. To be honest, I think you're coming out and you're saying, okay, if Jordan Romano can get us out of the, to me, it's all about a matchup thing, right? I mean, to me, the Blue Jays, it's kind of remarkable, and Rob has kind of said this to me about hockey lines. I think the same thing can be said about the pitching. Baseball's really changed where you don't have that set seventh inning die, that set eighth inning die, that set ninth inning die. It's more based on matchup, um, which is interesting because I also think it gives the opponent something different to look at, right? The way Simba's release point is. Um, but I 100% agree. I mean, his starter in the ninth inning of a tie game. Um, Apparently my internet's glitching out. We'll make it work. But no, I mean, sometimes you have to go with the matchup and the analytics, and whether baseball gets too analytical at points, I think is a debate. But it's at the end of the day, I'm not the manager. You're not the manager. These are analytical decisions, whether people like it or not, and I think we have a completely different discussion if Simber comes in that 10th inning, gives the lead runner an opportunity and scores that lead runner. But can we just talk about that shadow runner or whatever the heck they call it? I understand you want to shorten the game, but it's not baseball. It's just not. It's like, let's put a runner on second. Let's try to end this game as fast as possible. Meanwhile, in the playoffs, it's no shadow runner. You play it like you played the first 9 innings. I understand you don't want 18 inning games, but the odds of an 18 inning game with today's offense, not great. Um, and to be honest, if you do what Simber did last night and you put up a zero in that 10th inning, boy, does it change the bottom of that inning pretty quickly for the home side with the runner on second, because you know what you need to get to win the baseball game. To me, I think if you want to have an actual discussion, that runner on second base from a previous inning rule makes zero sense to me. Why you would have that in the regular season when it's not going to decide a World Series? Why are we playing with two separate rules? I understand it's about saving the pitching staff. Maybe baseball has a bigger issue than that if they're worried about pitching. I
Yeah,
don't
but
know. I've
you
never
can.
understood the rule. I don't like the rule. I think baseball should be played in the 10th inning the same way it's played in the ninth inning. And it also irritates me that we get a rule change in the playoffs just because now all of a sudden it's the playoffs and we don't think the shadow runner should be an issue to decide a World Series. Well, clearly it's going to be an issue to decide a couple regular season games. So why
Okay,
make
but
the
we can take
change?
that over to the NHL too. Why do we play 3-on-3 overtime and have a shootout in the regular season and play 5-on-5 in the playoffs? Because we don't believe a shootout should end a playoff series. Same thing. Same
So
issue. They don't
so
want games to
so
go
so
too
what
long.
so why should Shadowrunners decide radio season? It's just mystifying to me. Now I understand you're not with the NHL back to back, didn't want to play a triple overtime game somewhere else. I don't know. Maybe it's just something that makes the playoffs special. You have that triple overtime game. Tampa had that 5 overtime game. It's a
Yeah.
novelty. It's something. It's something to get the viewers in. But I just don't understand this shadow runner. To me, I have no issue with the shadow runner if he starts on first base. To me, it's like you're gifting the run by putting him at second base.
Yeah, I think starting at first base would be more reasonable. I agree. I just I I just understand the thought process behind it because I think it's similar to that of the 3-on-3 overtime with the shootout in the NHL.
Yeah, well, that's a debate for itself. I think the shootout should be abolished. I
I
mean, it
agree.
should be. I think it should be 10 minutes, 3-on-3. If you don't get a winner, you split the points and move on.
Agreed.
Because if you can't win a game at 3-on-3 in 10 minutes,
Then you don't deserve
sorry,
2 points.
sorry, you don't deserve a point. Sorry, I'm just really fired up today because I hate that. I hate that automatic runner so bad. It's like, yeah. It's not part of the game in my opinion, but they have it in there because they want to save their pitching staff, which I get because now apparently the starter can't go more than 3 times through the order, especially if you're Ross Stripling or somebody like that. And it seems to really have a problem letting him go that third time through the order, which is a big problem if and when he ever gets hit around in a baseball game, because then you got to blow your bullpen to try to get out of that game. And oh
Mhm.
yeah, last start I checked, you say Kikuchi couldn't get out of the first inning. Um, that's a big, big problem. But that's for another day. Um, big story for the Jays in recent days. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody. Hyunjin Ryu out for the season. Um, to be honest, I think you could have written that on the wall about 6 weeks ago. Um, Injury aside, personally, I wouldn't have pitched him. Um, to me, Ross Stripling's done enough to stay in that spot long term. And please sign Ross Stripling to a long term deal ASAP. And yes, I am also of the group that I think the Jays should also try to acquire Shohei Otani as well as as reuse replacement because it's clear the Angels aren't going anywhere.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
That'd be fun. But in all seriousness, are you surprised with Ryu?
No, he was right from day one, not good. Um, and then as soon as he went on that injured list the first time, um, he's a little bit older. He's not in the best shape. Those two items right there are going to be cause for concern when trying to recover an injury and cause for re-injury. That's just two factors that are very common knowledge factors in
Right.
injuries. So no, I'm not surprised. I don't know what they're gonna do with Kikuchi. I don't see how it's sustainable for him to be pitching every fifth day and costing them games every fifth day, but that's just my opinion.
Well, the other thing is if Kikuchi can't get out of the third inning, you're putting a lot of pressure on the likes of Alec Manoa and Jose Barrios to do what Barrios did yesterday because
And
you
pitch.
can't afford two long bullpen games in one rotation.
Yeah.
And it's bound to happen at some point where one of those guys can't get out of the fourth inning. And not to mention that your long guy is typically Ross Stripling, who is in essence right now your number 5 starter. So you don't have a long guy uh, to help bail you out. And the last I checked is Trent Thornton can't, be consistent enough to crack the starting rotation. And granted, if you need 9 or 10 or 11 outs, to be honest, Trent Thornton is the last guy I would expect to get that from. But again,
Unfortunately, me
right?
too.
I mean, you're in a division where you've just basically lost the division, because the Yankees are just blowing everybody away, and I can't figure out why because they just don't stop winning. Um, so that's why I'm really intrigued by this weekend series because I think if the Jays lose 2 out of 3, They're locked into a wild card halfway through the season, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Does it be 10 games or 11 games back? And that's really insurmountable the way the Yankees are going. Really quickly, Alek Manoah, all-star starter for the American
I would
League.
hope so.
I mean, to me, what this guy does is just remarkable.
Totally. Like it's consistent. You know me, I'm big on consistency. Um, it's exciting, it's consistent, he's young, it's deserving.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just interesting, right? And now they brought Gabriel Marino. He had 3 hits in the loss the other night. Um, Danny Johnson, Alejandro Kirk, pretty darn good catching scenarios. Would I trade one of them? No, I would not because I like my catchers. You can't have enough catchers. Um, I believe there's enough work for all of them if you want to go with 3 catchers in your rotation and sort of say if this guy's pitching, that guy's my catcher. Um, if that guy's pitching, that guy's my catcher. And then you have Alejandro Kirk as your DH with his bat. I think the less Alejandro Kirk catches, he should catch some. It's better for his bat. Um, that's that's just remarkable. The other thing, what did you think of Baltimore's idea to pitch to Vladdy?
If Vladdy was his normal self, hitting good percentage, good on base, high what's it called? You know what I'm looking for. Anyways, then I would say you're stupid to pitch to him, but honestly, this year I would rather pitch to, who wasn't it Kirk up next?
Right.
Like I'd rather pitch to Vladdy than Kirk right now. Especially, I think where they made the mistake was throwing Vladdy a strike. You probably
Hmm.
could have probably pitched him and not thrown him a strike, and he's been striking out a lot on
Right.
non-strikes. To me, if you're going to pitch to him, they didn't need to throw him a strike. But yeah, I would have pitched to him in this particular scenario. I would have pitched to him.
Right. Yeah, I agree 100% with you. I just don't want to. I just don't want to. Sorry, I just don't want to. I just don't want to. I forgot what I was gonna say. But no, that's interesting that way. Anyway, they play this afternoon. Just to wrap up here quickly, 2:07 Central Time.
Mhm.
First pitch. It's Kevin Gossman on the mound. Had a good start last time out in Detroit, but did not get the run support. What do we expect? And the projected starter for Baltimore is Tyler Wells, a 3.86 ERA. Gossman is 5-5 with a 2.68 ERA. Afternoon game. This is a must-win game for me, especially going into that series with New York tomorrow.
Yeah, playing Baltimore, going into a series with New York, you pretty much got to win that last game because the odds of you taking 2 out of 3 from New York right now with who's gonna be pitching in that series, I'm gonna say probably not gonna happen because I believe it's gonna end up being Stripling, Kikuchi, and Manoah, right, pitching to the New York
Yeah,
series, so
if you follow the rotation, right? And Rob makes the comment, Gossman playing his team that brought him into Major League Baseball. So I
yeah,
remember the Jays blowing up a young Kevin Gossman back
yeah.
in the day before he was the pitcher that he's become. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because to me, this is a must-win game because you've already used Burrios and Gossman in this series. Maybe it's time to go get a starter. Maybe it's time to give Nate Pearson a look. Maybe they're just trying to buy a little bit more time for Nate Pearson. Uh, But to me, they're
Nate
gonna
Pearson's
have
got to
more.
make it through a week without getting hurt first.
Sorry?
Nate Pearson's got to make it through a week of baseball without getting hurt first.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree with that, and, it screams that we need a starter ASAP.
Yep. And I would love it to be Nate Pearson. I genuinely just want to see him stay healthy for like 2 consecutive throwing games in the majors before I can say that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. But again, right? I mean, you look after this Yankees series, the schedule seems to soften again a little bit with the Brewers and teams like that. And I'm looking forward to Canada Day weekend. It's a 5-game series with a doubleheader with Tampa Bay in Toronto. Um, so prepare yourselves accordingly. Do you have any closing thoughts, Maddie?
No. Well, I did have one point that we didn't get to on the hockey.
Yep.
Um, Kind of a live by the sword, die by the sword situation for John Cooper, I think. I love that he has confidence in all 4 of his lines. I do, and it was very unfortunate. I right before this happened, I made the comment. I said, "Oh wow, tie game," and John Cooper's got his 4th line out with a minute and a half left in a tie game on the road, and then Pat Maroon takes that penalty. Live by the sword, die by the sword. I love the confidence in the 4th line, but when you see something like that happen, it's like, why wasn't, Sorelli's line out or Stamkos's line out or Point's line out, like literally any other line in that particular scenario? But because I do think that although they didn't score a power play goal, I do think that because that's how the overtime started, I
Yeah.
think that is why they scored. So,
Yeah, but are we I agree with you to an extent, Maddie, but what are we talking about if it's Stamkos taking that penalty instead of Pat Maroon? I think we're having the same kind of discussion.
I don't think so because my coaching philosophy anyways and
Right,
my beliefs is that you earn the benefit of the doubt. So Stamkos makes that mistake, while his consistency throughout the entire playoffs would suggest that that's a one-off. When a
right,
4th line guy does something like that at the end of the game, it's like he probably shouldn't be on the ice, and I like Pat Maroon. I just
right.
think it was a really costly error.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because the guys won 3 straight Stanley Cups, and you want to give that guy the benefit of the doubt too. Um,
Yeah,
it,
totally. And like I said, I like the guy.
I I think you can question I think you can question the penalty as a whole. I don't know if you can go that far, but the personal opinion is that was a penalty, but you just cannot put your team in that position, uh, to either have the game ended at the end of regulation or early in overtime or seconds after because you're trying to reset your lines after killing the penalty. It's a momentum killer, they say. And I don't know if you subscribe to this theory. The first 5 minutes of every period and the last 5 minutes in every period can be absolutely catastrophic. Same with overtime. Um, to me, it's just remarkable, Matty, how many games we've had in overtime that have ended in the first 5 minutes.
Yep.
There's been 8 or 9 of them by my count. Uh, Oh, it's like, you can't go anywhere because you think that by and large that overtime gonna be done in the first 5 minutes. You gotta mentally be with it, and if you're not, well, you're gonna lose in overtime.
I agree. That's why I thought it had such a big impact.
Yeah, I didn't honestly, I didn't even think about that until you brought it up. That's a really good point. I just want to make mention of something too. A bit of a schedule for game time today. We will be back the night after every Stanley Cup final game, with the exception of if that game falls on the weekend. So, an example, because Saturday game 2 and then on the weekend, the game 2 recap show would be on Monday. Otherwise, we're every second day with the series following the game the next day, with the exception of the weekend. I think there's only one of them. Actually, there's two of them. Game 6 would be on the weekend, Sunday night, a week Sunday night. So we'd be back on Monday. So that doesn't really affect anything. Just game 2. So we'll have a show Monday. Actually, we'll be on Monday and Tuesday next week. By that logic, Monday. You have to help me out here, Maddie. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Monday. I think if the series goes that far, 'cause I think this is the only 3-day break in the
Yeah, the
series.
rest are all 2-day breaks.
2-day breaks, so everything else is back to back to back to back to back. By the way, just want to make quick mention as well. Game 6 of the NBA Finals tonight. Golden State has a chance to wrap it up at the TD Garden in Boston. We'll see if they did it then. I don't think it gets done tonight. I think it goes back to San Francisco for a Game 7
Me too.
on Sunday. And as well, FIFA making the host announcement for the 2026 North American World Cup, which is split between Canada, the US, and Mexico. The venues will be announced at 4 o'clock this afternoon. You can catch that one on TV. We'll find out which Canadian cities will host World Cup games in 2026. Just a reminder, Vancouver, Edmonton, and Toronto are in contention for Canada. There are, I think, 8 to 10 stadiums in Mexico and 20 to 25 up for consideration in the US, most of which are NFL type stadiums. All right, Maddie, that's gonna pretty much do it. We shall be back on Monday to wrap it up. The Blue Bombers in action tomorrow night in Ottawa. We'll see if that game ends up getting delayed a little bit because they're calling for thunderstorms in the Ottawa area tomorrow night. So we'll see what becomes of that. The 1-0 Bombers taking on the 0-1 Ottawa Red Blacks. All right, for Maddie, this is Mike saying thank you very much. We went almost an hour, and that's just perfectly fine.
Of course.
Because once we get talking, we can't stop. And that's the beauty of sports talk. You know, you don't put a timer on it. It's like you're having a conversation. And that's going to be that as well. Remind me, Maddie, to ask you, because I don't have time right now, about the whole Bruce Cassidy Boston situation. Um, I'm still gonna spend a couple of days formulating my opinions. It doesn't make it entirely amount of sense. Um, I'm interested to hear what you have to say on Monday about that.
Yeah,
And
look into that a little bit more if you haven't read about, maybe a little bit of background about what happened there. Some unhappy players, some disgruntled.
yeah, we'll talk about that because I think it's pretty interesting too how quickly he got a job despite all of that.
I'm not surprised how quickly he got a job at
No,
all.
no, me neither. I think he's gonna have that a very good chance to win in Vegas, assuming they stay healthy. But that's up for
Yep.
discussion. Me thinks we might have some Jets coaching news by the time we hit the air on Monday. So stay tuned
That'd
for
be
that.
nice.
It could get very interesting. We'll also touch on the Memorial Cup that starts next week, as Rob mentions as well. The St. John Sea Dogs, Shawinigan Cataracts, Edmonton Oilkins, and last night the fourth member of that club, the Hamilton Bulldogs. Too bad no Winnipeg Ice, but Edmonton a well-deserved opponent. I am convinced that the Ice will be there next year in Kamloops. So go Peter.
Hopefully.
For Maddie, this is Mike saying thank you very much. Have a great weekend. We will chat with you on Monday, wrapping up game 2 and setting up game 3, and also talking about the Toronto series with New York. Thank you very much for watching, and we will be back on Monday. Bye for now.